Here's 5 talking points from Manchester United's horrible defeat to Spurs in the Premier League yesterday. Number one, league position. I mean, already, the league table can actually be quite deceiving, it has to be said. United are currently sitting in 12th place, 7 points from 6 games. Now, the optimist in everybody will say we're only 6 points off of top 4. And that is true, we are only 6 points off of top 4, but we're 6 points off of top 4 after 6 games. And the form that Manchester United are showing in the early stages of this league campaign is relegation form. We mentioned it yesterday on the live that 7 points from 6 games in a good Premier League season, that kind of form consistently throughout the year gets you relegated. It does. You're hovering around 40 points. So, it's been an absolutely horrible start to the Premier League season for us. And again, we're already talking about goal difference. We're at -3 in goal difference already. And, at the start of the season when we were talking about, a realistic goal for Manchester United was top 4, and that was the right goal to be looking at. I think goal difference is going to be, or was going to be, so vitally important in relation to that race to get into top 4, given how many teams are vying for it. You're talking about your Chelsea's now, you're talking about Aston Villa's, you're talking about Newcastle, Spurs, all of these teams, Brighton even, are all fighting for them European spots. And for United to again have a minus goal difference after only 6 games is just criminal. It really, really is. We're talking about top 4. Is top 4 gone? Look, it's not gone, okay? We are only 6 points off. And there are a lot of teams between us and top 4 that you would expect to drop points throughout the season. Your Brentfords, your Forests, your Brightons, your Newcastles, even your Spurs. Fulham are there as well. You would at Chelsea. Let's see how they get on between now and the end of the season. So top 4 isn't gone, but we're talking about top 4 not being gone if we have an instant turnaround in our form and start winning games, which I don't see happening. And that's the big concern. We're 6 points off. But before the after the international break, or when we go into the international break, we could easily find ourselves, 9 points off, 10 points off, whatever the case may be. And when you're talking about that kind of a gap between where you are and where you want to be, and the form that you're showing on top of it, I think it's a big, big gap to close, even this early in the season. I think top 4 is not going to happen for Manchester United, not only because of how we're playing, but the competition that are alongside us trying to get into them 4 spots. I don't think top 4 is going to happen. We need to get up the table as quickly as possible and put wins on the board, but I don't see it happening given the form that we've got. Number 2, midfield concern. Now, number of different points to talk on this one. And yesterday we seen the Manchester United of old, and I mean the Manchester United of last season, where we were very easily played through, especially in midfield. Now, number of talking points, obviously Ugarte is the first one, and there has been some criticism I've seen online for him. Ugarte is only bedding in. It's his new club. He's finding his feet. I've no concerns with him, to be quite honest with you. I can understand, a poor performance early doors when you're settling in, you're bedding into the new club, and you're trying to understand how your new teammates and your new team play and how your manager wants you to play. So no real concerns about Ugarte. I do see enough there from him to think he will be a really good player for Manchester United. Second one is Bruno Fernandes. Now, we're going to talk about Bruno Fernandes in 2 different ways here. First and foremost is his form. It's absolutely atrocious. So far this season, throughout the entirety of the season, he's given the ball away so much, and we spoke about it in depth in midweek and last weekend, and we were expecting a bit more out of him because the pressure was starting to fall, but we've seen him giving the ball away an awful lot. Now, in fairness, I will say he wasn't the only one. Everybody was giving the ball away against Spurs. Everybody. It was our possession retention was absolutely atrocious. The amount of times we gave it away trying to play out from the back, simple passes, trying to play into space when the ball to feet is on and vice versa. It was really, really poor. Decision making was really bad. But also with Bruno Fernandes, he got a red card. Now, it was not a red card, and the majority of, 99% of people who watch the game will say it wasn't a red card, and it definitely wasn't. And, we can get into in later dates talking about VAR and, my opinions on that. I don't see why VAR don't make the correct decision there when the whole world can see it. I still think they're trying to protect the on-field referee too much, and not make out that he made a mistake when he clearly did. But Bruno Fernandes is going to find himself out of the team now. And, I'm sure, I don't think Bruno Fernandes is going to get a 3-game ban for that. United, I'm sure, will appeal. Again, we'll wait and see how many games. But he is going to miss at least one game. Is it a scenario now where Bruno Fernandes finds himself out of the team? He needs to rethink and maybe, collect himself again and say, I need to improve. Is it a little bit of a rest maybe that he needs? We know the amount of game time that he plays. But regardless of what happens, he needs to improve his performances. Mason Mount came off last night as well. He got stitches in his head. He should be okay. You can wear protective things now for that. So he's going to find himself probably in the team. And he's going to have to take his chance as well. And the final one, and probably the biggest concern here, is Kobbie Mainoo. We seen him come off last night, substitute. He was holding his hamstring. We're yet to hear an update on, how serious or not serious that injury is. You would expect him to miss potentially the game against Porto on Thursday night. But again, we'll have to wait and see. So there's a concern there again automatically for midfield with Bruno gone, Kobbie Mainoo gone, and the all-round effectiveness of the midfield and how we're playing. Number 3, same old mistakes. Like I said on one of the previous points, it looked like Manchester United of last season. It really, really did. It was a lackluster performance. It looked flat. It looked, like they had no confidence. And we know this Manchester United side, and the Manchester United sides of old over the last couple of seasons, when we do go a goal down, the heads drop. And it's very hard for us to pick ourselves up and, regain a lead. And that was the case yesterday. The first goal, was just criminal. It was absolutely criminal. First and foremost, for giving the ball away between Rashford and Garnacho. Again, decision making. And again, nobody taking control. But for Van der Ven to pick up the ball where he did and run all the way to the end line in itself is absolutely criminal. It's absolutely criminal. You have to be putting a challenge in early there and at least showing him away. Now, Ugarte was outrun and De Ligt was outrun as well. And I think the two biggest criticisms for the goal will, in terms of Van der Ven's advancement of the ball, will fall to both Ugarte and De Ligt and a lesser extent Mazraoui, who was on the outside of him. But we've seen so many times players at the back post this season and last season not being picked up. And Delors, when he sees, if you look back on it, there's replays that were shown on Sky Sports where Van der Ven is advancing and Brennan Johnson sees the danger and he's gone. He's gone and Delors just ambles. He doesn't identify the danger that's there. Now, he's probably thinking, where's Van der Ven running? He's running into 3 and 4 players, surely one of them. But you can't take a chance on that. You've got to track your runner as a fullback and do not allow him to advance into an area where he can potentially score without you being there. And you could see as soon as the ball left Van der Ven's foot and was squared across, Delors had his hand up apologising. He knew he made a mistake. It's happening far too often for, a side of Manchester United where, we were talking before the game at how, well the back four had settled in and how, how much of a bond they've already potentially been made throughout the season so far. But it's criminal mistakes. It's criminal mistakes. And we know that Delors can be very good on his day, but he can also be very, very bad. And we spoke last night, does Luke Shaw come straight back into this team? When he is eventually fit. On last night's performance, he walks back into that team. He probably limps back into the team with the injuries that he's had. It needs to be better. Number 4, time up for Ten Hag. Question mark. Question mark is the main part of that. I think I don't see Erik Ten Hag coming back from this. I honestly don't. I said it last night on the live that we've seen performances like this a lot last season And the differences between last season and this season are injuries. We had the excuse of injuries last season, and the team was, and the squad was decimated. The squad was decimated with injuries last season. However, between then and now, we've spent an awful lot of money in terms of improving the squad with players being signed over the summer. And we have improved. De Ligt has been a very good signing. Mazraoui's been a good signing. Xerxes has been a good signing. Ugarte has been a good signing. Yaro has been a good signing, even though he hasn't played. And with all of them signings, we now no longer have injuries. Okay? The only injuries we had going into last night's game was our two left backs, which is Malacia and Luke Shaw. The excuses are no longer there for Erik ten Hag. We've got no injuries, we've spent a lot of money, and we've seen minimal improvement. I think we've seen slight improvement because, the majority of the performances this season have been improved on last season. However, it's not enough. It's not enough. And when you see these performances raising their ugly heads again and again and again and again, the main word here is consistency, and Ten Hag cannot get any consistency out of this team, and is it the team's fault? I mean, we're after changing basically the entire team. The only three players that are left that are not Erik ten Hag signings are Bruno Fernandes, Marcus Rashford, Luke Shaw, just four, and Delort. I'm pretty sure, correct me if I'm wrong. But, so we're talking last night, Delort, Bruno and Rashford were the only three players that weren't Erik ten Hag signings, and he can't get any consistency out of the team. I don't see how he comes back from it. I honestly don't. I will stick to my guns, and what I've said is that I want him to get it right, and I want him, to succeed at Manchester United like I do any other manager. But I can't see him doing it. There's been 18 months now. Ever since we won the Carabao Cup in Ten Hag's first season, we went on a downward trajectory. It hasn't come back up since. It honestly hasn't. Now, we've had one-off really good performances. The FA Cup final, where we've won a trophy. But if you zoom out, the graph is going down, ever since that Carabao Cup game over Newcastle. And it hasn't gone back up enough, in my opinion. I don't see how Erik ten Hag survives. I honestly don't. Yeah, I think it's endgame for him. I honestly do, with the money that's been spent. And, will they pull the trigger on it, Ineos? That remains to be seen. I think they'll probably give him at least until the international break. Is that after next weekend, I think? Is Villa the next... after Villa is the next international break. So we've got, Porto midweek and Villa, and they're not... Two of them are not easy games away from home in Europe. And we know how well Villa have been doing this season. I think they'll probably get... And as well, we've seen historically, with... Not specifically with Manchester United, but with clubs changing managers, they tend to do it around the international break because it allows the manager to get in and get a couple of weeks on the training ground with the players who are not gone on international duty, to get his philosophy and his ideas in. Yeah, I don't think there's a way back for Erik ten Hag. Let me know what you think in the comments, guys, about Ten Hag. Do you think it's time for him to go? And do you think, Ineos will pull the trigger? Let me know in the comment section below. And number 5, who replaces him? Look, we can talk about Erik ten Hag being sacked all we want. And, there was a lot of talk about it at the end of last season before the FA Cup final. And I was obviously resolute in wanting Erik ten Hag to stay. I'm less resolute now, to be honest with you. But the same issue still remains. Who's available? And what manager can you get if Erik ten Hag is to be sacked? Now, first and foremost, let's look at the closest person to him that people are talking about, which is Ruud van Nistelrooy. I'm completely against Ruud van Nistelrooy being the manager of Manchester United, especially if it's an interim role. I don't want an interim manager coming in. It hasn't worked in the past. It won't work again. We've seen Ollie come in. He was very successful for a short period of time, and then all of a sudden you pull the trigger and give him the job, and all of a sudden it dips again. I think if we are to change the manager, it needs to be a permanent replacement. And with Ruud van Nistelrooy, I mean, what has he really done in management to warrant the Manchester United job? I love Ruud van Nistelrooy, one of my favourite ever players, at Manchester United. But he done well with PSV in the Eredivisie. Erik ten Hag done better than him in the Eredivisie and done way better in Europe. So I think automatically that, and as well, what you have to realise is that Ruud van Nistelrooy has a hand in the performances this season. Ruud van Nistelrooy has come in as a coach and one of the greatest finishers the game, or Manchester United at least, has ever seen, and we can't score goals. Now, do you want to give the job to that guy permanently? I don't think so. Outside of that, who is there? A lot of talk about Thomas Tuchel. I like Thomas Tuchel as a coach. I think I think he does have the mentality and the stature and the shoulders to take on a job like Manchester United. However, the downside to Tuchel is that he wants too much control over transfers, and Ineos and the structure that's behind Manchester United now will not give up that control. And I think if Thomas Tuchel took over, I think we would have a falling out, and we would see in 12, 18, 2 years, there'd be a falling out and he'd be gone and we'd be back to square one again. I'm not even going to mention the former England manager, because I will stop watching Manchester United if we appoint him as manager. Graham Potter falls into that same category. And the thing about them two as well is that they've had previous dealings with Dan Ashworth. And, obviously Southgate with the FA and with the England job, and then Graham Potter with Brighton, where Dan Ashworth has been, sporting director at both of them. So, yeah, I don't know. There's a lot of answers needed to a lot of questions. First and foremost, Erik ten Hag is still the manager, and I will continue to support him, as long as he is the manager, like I would anyone else. But yeah, I think his days are numbered, and I don't know who we get. I'll have to look into it a bit more. There are a lot of talks about, Thiago Motta doing a lot of good things. Young managers like that remains to be seen. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below, guys. If Erik ten Hag is to be sacked, who would you want? Who would you want as manager coming in? Please do smash a like on the video as well, guys. Hit the subscribe button if you are new to the channel. I'll be back tonight from 9 o'clock for our live news show. As always, please join us for that. Until then, see you later.